Hello class, this is a video tutorial on changing the subject of a formula. So the first thing we need to understand is what a subject is. So the subject of a formula is the pronumeral on its own, the one that is isolated on its own. So for example, we have three different formulas in green. So this formula converts Celsius degrees to Fahrenheit. So Fahrenheit is equal to, Fahrenheit is equal to 9 over 7 Celsius plus 32. So currently the subject is Fahrenheit, and in this next example, area of a circle is pi r squared, so the subject is A, the area. And lastly, here we have another formula where N is the subject and V and A are what's known as variables. And I've shown here in purple how these formulas where the subject can change. So notice how F is once the subject, now it is C, and it has changed its form. Same with this area, it is now R. Lastly, here we have V as a variable and N is the subject, but now we've made V the subject and N is now a variable. I'm going to show you how we do this. So let's rearrange the following to make X the subject. How we do this is the letter or the pronumeral that we are going to focus on, we're going to treat that as the only letter, and every other pronumeral we'll treat as if they were numbers. So for example, another way you can think of it is we're going to solve this equation where this is the only letter that exists and everything else is a number. So for example, here we have A plus X. If A were a number, how would we get rid of it? Well, we would get rid of it by subtracting A on both sides. This will leave us with X by itself equaling, well, B minus A can't connect, they can't combine, so it just stays as B minus A. Another example here, we have AX, that's A times X. To remove this A, we would divide by A. That would cancel both A's, leaving us with X equals B on A. Here we have another example, X over A. Pretty sure you can kind of guess what we're going to do now. We're going to multiply by A. So in this case we get X equals B times A is BA, or AB. This last one here, we have X minus A, so the opposite is adding A on both sides. This will give us X by itself equaling B plus A, or A plus B. Okay, so those are all pretty straightforward examples. We're going to look at where examples where there are more steps involved. Here we go. So treating this like an equation, we focus on the number that's most by itself. So in this case, B and X are together, and A is by itself. So we're going to get rid of that first. This will give us BX equals C minus A. Now, to get rid of that B, we would divide by B, and we divide everything by B on the right hand side, giving us X equals C minus A over B. Okay, let me just rearrange this a little bit to give myself more space. Another example, we have AX minus B all over C. So to change this, we would get rid of this first. So we'd multiply both sides by C. This will give us AX minus B equals CD. This one, opposite that we need to do now, well, A and X are together. So we can't do that. We need to get rid of the b first. So minus b. The opposite is plus b. This will give us ax equals cd plus b, or just positive b plus cd. And lastly, we would divide by a. This will give us x equals b plus cd all over a. Now we're going to get into with a square here, an x squared. So let me zoom in here. Oops. So the first thing we have to focus on is the opposite of the number that's by itself. So in this case, minus b. I'm going to add b first. This gives us ax squared equals b plus c. We need to get rid of that a next. Whoops. Dividing both sides by a. This will give us x squared equals b plus c all over a. And now the opposite of this square here is the square root of that number. Check the square root of both sides, leaving us with x by itself equaling b plus c over a, all square root. Okay, we'll do one last example here. Hopefully you're still following along. This one's a fairly simple one. So if the opposite, I want you to think of this, if the opposite of a square is the square root, right? To reverse this, we would take the square of both sides like this. Okay, the reason I'm pointing that out to you is because this next example requires us to do this. Once again, think about the number that's by itself the most. So in this case, it is a. So we're going to subtract a on both sides. This gives us square root of x equals b minus a. Now we're going to take the square of both sides. So I'm going to take this number and square it, and do the same thing here. Take the squared. These two symbols will cancel each other out, leaving us with just x by itself. b minus a squared. Right, so I hope you see the idea of changing the subject. It is like we treat everything else like a number, and what we want to make the subject, in this case x, we treat that as the pronumeral. Okay, so hopefully that gave you an insight into changing the subject of a formula. Best of luck.